Well, hello there, my pretty darlings. My name is Elena, and today I have called this meeting on this silly little platform to raise an issue, a problem, nay, a miscarriage of justice. Today, I will be talking about, drumroll please, Vittrup man, yippee! Basically, this guy that lived about a bajillion years ago. Okay, so not like a bajillion years ago, but like quite a while, okay? Like Stone Age, I mean end of Stone Age, but still Stone Age. But alas, I'm getting ahead of myself. I hear you asking, who is Vittrup man? Why should I care about this Vittrup man? All excellent questions. And that will be answered by Intelligent Glasses Elena. To you, Intelligent Glasses Elena. So Vittrup man was the skeleton that was found in northern Denmark, right? By these guys who were basically cutting up peat. So basically that's when you like cut up a bit of the bog so that you can get some sweet, sweet crusty moss to burn. By the way, besties, I wouldn't recommend doing this. First off, because the bog moss is gross and icky, and second off, it's actually endangered. She's a delicate soul. The remains actually consisted of just like a head and like a femur, which is like this bit here. Also, they call him Vittrup man because of his skull characteristics, which isn't very convincing to say it's one sex or the other. So from now on, I'm going to call this bestie Vittrup bestie. So our beloved Vittrup bestie was found with a fat wooden club, some animal bones, and a clay pot. But we ignore the clay pot, she's too old. But I hear you scream. A bog and a body found in a bog? Is this a bog body? Yes, it is. Yes, she is. I know they aren't as pretty looking as those A-listers with fancy things like faces and hair and manicures, but I promise she is interesting. They are interesting, I promise. So, here's the interesting thing about our Vittrup bestie. Well, okay, two things about our Vittrup bestie that is interesting. First off, they were definitely for real murdered. Like, look at those skull impacts. Very interesting. There's 8 of them. That's a lot. That's a lot of skull impacts. Some archaeologists think Peter McPeterson had something to do with it, but that's by the by. The jury's still out. But that's not even the interesting bit, no. Being murdered is actually pretty common and small fry for bog bodies. No. So, some various analyses were done on the teeth and the bones of our Vittrup bestie, including strontium and oxygen. I will get to them later, and carbon and nitrogen. I will also get to those later. To look at where he moved, right? Where he moved? No, not where he moved, where they had moved from. And if they found out that it's a big likelihood that they moved from further up north somewhere to Denmark. They moved. They even changed diets and everything. That's far. That's like a lot of water. And that's great, right? That's fantastic. Fantastic, slayful, end of story, yes? But this is where this poor bog-soaked fellow has been caught right in an absolute avalanche of misinformation right here on this very platform, right here. The main culprit, I fear, is this video. I think the enthusiasm is fantastic, but, okay, here's what this video had to say about dear Vittrup bestie. The detection of strontium, nitrogen, carbon, and oxygen in his enamel revealed what he was eating and where he was eating. Now, see, I don't want to create any like YouTuber beef or yuck anyone's yum, but I fear this is giving wrong a little bit, just a little bit, just a tiny bit. I know it feels like I'm splitting hairs here with this little niggle, but every one of those can be found in everyone's teeth. It's not just like picked up in some people's teeth, it's in everyone's teeth. And kind of presenting isotope analysis with this kind of like absolute hardcore, like black and white, this is what happened definitely, it's really not doing it justice, I fear. Archaeologists are not, we are not that confident on isotopes ever. absolutely ever. So I'm gonna write this wrong. And I'm gonna tell you the proper good science of isotopes. In a fun way, I promise, I promise, I promise. Back to you, Glasses Elena. Okay, so let's tackle the moving question first. How do we know that Vittrup bestie was specifically not from Denmark and may have been from further up north? So we know that from the strontium and the oxygen. But today I'm just going to be focusing on the strontium because oxygen is a flaky bitch. And she will tell you that you're from somewhere else and ditch your plans because even you read her texts a little bit wrong, just a little bit wrong. Because, I don't know, the weather was off that day. You didn't know the temperature that day. You don't know if she had her morning tea. But I don't have time to get into that today. So, the strontium. Strontium is a heavy-based metal, right? And it's naturally found in most rocks in various quantities. That's the important bit. So some of them have a lot, some of them have a little bit. And basically, I'm just gonna move you so you can see my lovely diagram. So strontium is very reactive. She's very clingy, like a bad ex, right? So it comes from the rocks, first off. And when it comes into contact with, say, water flowing from a stream, it'll transfer, writing bad poetry all the way, into the water, right? So that's where lots and lots of strontium is. And so when this strontium, or the water with the strontium in it, is sucked up by a plant, then all the strontium's in there, yes? So then when a deer, or any other herbivore, eats said plants, it transfers to said deer. And then the strontium gets transferred into lions. No, I could not be asked to draw a lion. And humans, right? So we know how much strontium was in the rocks based on how much was in your bones that you kind of get soaked up by eating various things. So remember, kids, strontium varies in the type of rock. So some of it has a lot of strontium, some of it has a little bit of strontium, right? So in essence, strontium from rock, same as strontium from bone? Yes. If strontium from rock, different from strontium of bone? Not. So now I hear you asking, how do we measure that across a whole lifetime? Right, so problem with bones is that they are constantly remodeling, right? So you can only track it from about 5-10 years before you die, the strontium levels. So how do we do that over a period of time? How do we know that Vittrup bestie had his childhood in possibly Northern Europe? Well, teeth, I tell you. Teeth. Teeth! Teeth. Teeth! Teeth. Delicious! Teeth develop across different points in your life and stay that way, baby. So if we kind of measure the layers of the teeth, actually it's up from down, the layers of the teeth, we know where you were at certain points of your life. Amazing, incredible. Because remember, kids, isotopes are not magic. So we know he moved hella distance, but what about the diet? How do we know what this guy was munching on? Well, it's to do with those tasty carbon and nitrogen isotopes we also found in his teeth. Teeth! Also, sidebar, look how worn his teeth are from eating stuff. Sick, right? Hella cool. Anyway, so first off, nitrogen. So, nitrogen is formed usually in plants, right? In tiny, tiny amounts, but all plants do it. It's like a photosynthesis thing, right? So they have a little bit. And like the strontium, it's very clingy, like a bad ex. So it's there. And then when a deer, herbivore, anything like that, okay, I know this looks like not a deer, but just pretend it's a deer, it gets into the deer, right? But because it's eating so many of these plants, these tasty, tasty leaves, it has more nitrogen, right? So when a omnivore, like a human or a weasel or something, has both plants and herbivores, right? It gets lots of nitrogen from the herbivore, but then it also gets like a little bit of nitrogen from the plants, so it gets a little bit higher in nitrogen. But if you've got a Okay, this is why I didn't draw the lion in the previous one. This is supposed to be a lion. Pretend it's a goddamn lion, okay? But if it eats just big boy herbivores, it's gonna get tons and tons and tons of nitrogen, right? So it has lots and lots. And so these are kind of on levels-ish that we call trophic levels, right? And I've done a dashed line and they're kind of not in the lines. Not that I'm bad at drawing. It's not because of that. It's because basically they're like, there's variation. So if you're kind of lower on your trophic level, you're probably eating more plants, right? And if you're higher on the trophic level, you're probably eating more animals because you got more nitrogen. Do you see what I mean? Actually, just an extra little tidbit for you. Actually, it gets complicated when humans start farming because they start putting like herbivore dung, cow and stuff like that into the plants, right? Which soak up all the nitrogen, makes them grow better, but then has super nitrogen plants. So then it increases, therefore, this level higher, so it makes it look like you've eaten more meat, even though it might just be milk or like plants that have had cow dung in it. Do you see what I mean? But that's a thing for another day. So how does this apply to Vittrup bestie? Well, looking at his teeth, nitrogen in his teeth, they could tell that basically from at the age of about, I think like 13 to 14, yeah, about 13 to 14, it's a bit vague to tell with teeth, so 13 to 14 is good a guess. It basically plummets. He gets like no nitrogen. He's getting none of these bad boys. Well, he's getting fewer, which means that he was probably eating more of these bad boys and less of these bad boys. Do you see what I mean? Which, there's a difference. Another thing we do know about Vittrup bestie is that they weren't eating that many Nemos like after 13, 14. Say, how do we know this? Well, carbon. This is how we know this. Right, so basically, carbon. You get two different sources from it naturally in the environment, right? I mean, first source, same principle as nitrogen. You get it from plants, from photosynthesis, right? Both in the ocean and on land. But one key difference, there's another source of carbon, which is like, basically like dissolved carbon in the water, which basically everybody sucks up on top of the other carbon. So it makes marine animals a lot higher in carbon. So like plant on land, very small. Plant in ocean, a little bit higher. And obviously the same thing goes with nitrogen, because the herbivores are eating more of these plants, they get more nitrogen. As you can see, fish is slightly higher than deer because more carbon, right? So as it continues on, you get more and more carbon. Also, another thing is about marine environments usually have more in the chain, so they get higher anyway, but like on top of the carbon thing. So if you're just eating land animals, say a deer or a lion, if you're really brave enough, yes, this is a lion, don't talk to me, but if you're having more marine animals, you're going to get higher carbon, right? So what we find about Vittrup bestie is that their carbon plummets once again at 13 to 14-ish. So what means Vittrup bestie was having less of that B12, and obviously fish probably, and more of them terrestrial animals. Interesting. Well then, how do we know that Vittrup bestie ate cows and sheep and stuff like that? Well, to be honest, we don't really. I mean, they got some stuff from the enamel off the tartar of the guy's teeth. It's not as good though, so we can't be that specific. We don't know that Vittrup bestie specifically ate cows and sheep, right? Just because the other YouTube video said that it does, that they definitely ate cows and sheep and stuff like that, we don't know for sure. So just to let you know, we just know that there was a move from marine to terrestrial, right? Cool. So there we go. Now we know a little bit about our bestie, Vittrup bestie, and what they eat and possibly where they move to. What we don't know now is, the circumstances surrounding this. Why did they get murdered? What were their circumstances for this move? Why did they move to that orange highlighter country? Just as a sidebar, peace and love to you, Denmark, but that orange is ugly. I'm sorry, that orange is ugly. And you need to change it. I'm sorry, it's just true. So we do have some theories though, right? So some archaeologists theorized, I'll put their paper down in the description, that our Vittrup bestie may have moved from the hunter-gatherer cultures of like Norway and Sweden down south to farmers of a funnel beaker culture, right? Obviously that would explain the differences in marine to terrestrial mammals, sort of, but it's not like a watertight theory. So there could be still a number of possibilities. I mean, Vittrup bestie also could have been trading, like the video suggests. Scientists also don't say this, by the way. The video does say that scientists have suggested this. They don't. But bestie could have been a trader. There's a whole number of other possibilities. I mean, they could be like pushed down by a particularly harsh winter or something like that. We don't know. Well, I think I'd like to hear you guys' theories. Put it down in the description. I want to hear it. What do you think happened to Vittrup bestie? Why do you think they moved? Good question. Let me know. Well, okay. That's all for now. Comment, like, and subscribe, besties. That's what the YouTubers say, right? Yeah. Like, comment, and subscribe. All that jazz. I will see you in maybe the next video or in the comment section. Anyway, bye!